Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this live Create With webinar decoded session where we're going to be learning all about how to build or rebuild any marketing website from our friend Julian Galuzzo here. First, I'm just going to do a quick intro to Create With and what we're all about, and then we'll dive straight into the good stuff. Create With, I'm one of the co-founders. We started a couple of years ago because we wanted to help non-technical people or people from non-technical roles like ourselves to build apps and automations with AI because that's just becoming more and more possible these days. So why are we doing that? Well, there's like 8 billion people in the world at the moment, but only 27 million of them know how to write code. That's an awful lot of power to put in the hands of a very small number of people. And it's definitely not good for the human race that such a small number of people can do such an amazing thing. We actually think that there's at least 1.5 billion technically curious people who would really like to build software and automations if they could. And the great news is that now we can. So if you think back of the timeline of technology and the web and the internet, if you were, around in the 90s, you may remember if you wanted to have a presence on the internet, you needed to learn how to write HTML and CSS, and it was all a big faff. And then in the 2000s, we had sites like Squarespace, WordPress, and Wix spring up, which then made it possible for non-technical people to build their own space on the internet. But these were generally quite basic websites. They didn't really do that much. Then in the 2010s, we saw other no-code tools spring up, which made it possible to build actually fully functional applications without needing to write code. And that is how I got into this whole space. I discovered Bubble in 2019 and suddenly went crazy and started building all these different ideas I'd had for years and years. I tried to learn to code, but I could never make it stick. And they really opened up the door to a lot of so-called non-technical people to build technical stuff. Then, obviously, you may have noticed in the last few years we've had AI come out, and it turns out AI is really good at writing code for you. So now we've got a whole raft of new tools, one of which we're going to be talking about today, Claude Code, which means you can tell an AI in natural language in English or maybe other languages. I don't know. I've never tried. What you want, and it will write the code for you and build you fully functional apps just from prompting, just like talking to a normal chatbot. So this is an amazing time to be someone from a non-technical role who has ideas for things that you want to build. So with that said, I'm going to jump right in now. We're going to get Julian on. He's going to show us some of the amazing stuff he has built with Claude Code. Julian, I don't know if you want to start with an intro and tell us, the really cool thing is that you don't have a technical background, do you? And you've only been using Claude Code for a short amount of time. So yeah, super excited to see what you have to tell us.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely do not have a technical background. Similarly, I wanted to learn how to code, started, and then I'm like, wow, this took me a really long time to get Hello World up on the screen. I was like famously called very lazy as a kid. I'm not lazy, I'm just efficient. And so when I had to take that much time in order to get anything working, that wasn't it for me. So I was doing a bunch of client work, just making like small business sites with Wix, Squarespace, stuff like that. Ended up meeting a guy who showed me Webflow. And the reason why I liked Webflow so much is because it allowed me to build what I wanted to build properly without having to overcome this giant barrier. There's a bit of a learning curve, but once you figure it out, it's not too hard. So started a Webflow agency and basically have been like all in on Webflow since about, let's say, 2018. And then I ended up joining a company called Memberstack. If anyone here is in the Webflow space at all, you may already know who Memberstack is. And so leading into all of this, the Memberstack site has been in Webflow, as is everything that we've been doing since like 2018. But last year, our way of working rapidly started to shift. I used to show people how to build web apps with no-code tools. So similar to what Kieran said with Bubble, I showed people how to build web apps with Webflow and a whole bunch of other stuff. But honestly, it's not the best. However, there's a smaller learning curve. So once AI started to come around, I very, very quickly caught on to that. For example, I used to have developers make these custom scripts for our Webflow sites. And so even like GPT-3 comes around, I started messing around building these things on my own. And it really took off from there. Eventually, Cursor came around. I started actually building full-on web apps with code, despite not knowing how to code. And then Claude Code came around. So if you haven't used Claude Code before, you might be looking at it and you're like, this is a terminal. This is weird. Why would I be using something like this? I thought the same thing. I was using Cursor for a while. And then my friend Alex, actually, I'm talking to him. He's like, Claude Code is like a self-driving car. Doesn't even make any sense. I don't know why he said that, but for some reason it got me hooked and I decided to give it a go. He was right. It absolutely is like a self-driving car. So I started building things quickly, which were working, publishing them, nothing's breaking, and it all just took off from there. So that was like mid last year. So let's just say 6, 7, 8 months ago was when I first discovered and first started using Claude Code. Fast forward, I built quite a few different things, and now sharing my screen, we have the old Memberstack website, which is, like I said, been in Webflow for over 8 years. And a year ago, well, a year ago from November, so November 2024, I basically went through, re-skinned the entire thing, made it look better. It was like a long 2 month process. It was very difficult because here's the thing. When it comes to Webflow and really any no-code tools, they give you a decent bit of flexibility, but they also give you a lot of flexibility to mess things up. And so we had a site that had been worked on by like 10 people over a very long amount of time. And so it was not fun to work on, let me tell you. If you know Webflow, let me put it this way. There were like 8 different ways of naming your classes. There were collection lists, which nobody had touched in 5+ years. It was a mess. And so I'm talking to my coworker, we're looking at the site and going, okay, we gotta rebuild this site. We gotta make a lot of improvements to the site, the marketing, messaging, everything. And I was excited to do that because that makes a huge difference for our company. But at the same time, I had this like existential dread of having to go back into that Webflow project and do anything again. So, anyways, I thought that was just going to be the reality. So, what we ended up doing was we made a prototype in Claude Code of just what this homepage could look like, how we could make it look better. And in like 8 or 9 hours, I ended up with a homepage. Here's the thing. This homepage right here was built in 2024. Nice homepage. I designed it. I developed it. But this took weeks of just working on this one individual homepage. And so after about 8 hours, what I ended up with, I'm now going to show you the one that was made by Claude Code. Pretty much this is what we had after 8 hours working with Claude Code. Not to mention these animations. I've owned a web development agency, and these animations were like the biggest blocker. No client wanted to invest in them, but this is the difference, in my opinion, between having a nice site and like a really, really nice site. So we were able to get all of these, as you'll see throughout the site. There are a lot of different animations showing how the product works. And really, I mean, we just ended up with an insanely beautiful homepage. That's all well and good. And now I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to have to go and rebuild this in Webflow now. I'm not excited for that. And so here's the thing. A lot of people build a lot of things with Claude Code, but you don't see too many stories of people actually going and taking something like this website is responsible for 100% of our revenue. If I was to have built this site and done something wrong, then like we would have just stopped making money. And quite a few people's, salaries, including my own, rely on that. So that's not really an option. So we were thinking, oh, we're going to have to do this in Webflow, right? Right. So we're talking about it. Can't really figure out a reason to not do it in Claude Code. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start rebuilding it and see what happens. And I'm assuming there's going to be a reason why we can sit here and go, okay, AI can't do this. We're not at that point yet. Anyway, so I built out all of the static pages. So just to make sure if somebody doesn't know the terminology, static pages like the home page, the pricing, pages with links, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy, but along with that, there's a CMS. So CMS, that's just where you hold all of your content, your blog, stuff like that. That's where I thought it was going to fall apart. So ended up taking the collection from Webflow for testimonials, slap that into Claude Code, it migrated it perfectly. Then I got to the more complicated ones. For example, we have our blog posts, a little bit more complicated, ended up migrating all of those over perfectly. Components, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say here is this site is massive. There are over 100 static pages and over 3,000 dynamic pages. So this is not a small site. If you're rebuilding something small, and what I'm going to get to today is actually showing you live rebuilding this site here for a little side project that we worked on as a team a little while ago. If you have something like this is maybe 14 pages, a couple collections, stuff like that. You can genuinely rebuild this in less than a day, and you will be able to develop and work on your site faster than you ever have before. But even if you have a site like the Memberstack one here, which is just absolutely massive, you can still do it. And this whole project took from start to finish about 2.5 weeks, which is absolutely insane for rebuilding a site which has been in the works for like 8+ years. So this was really what opened my mind to, okay, this is far beyond building demos at this point. We can take production things that are business critical, rebuild them with Claude Code. And what does that actually mean to you as a marketer? Here's the thing. Looking at our Webflow site, it's nice. There's nothing wrong. We didn't leave Webflow because Webflow sucks and it's bad or anything like that. But at the end of the day, as a team, we would have an idea for a new page and it would just go into the backlog because I'm busy. Everyone else on my team is busy. And I'm sure a lot of you have similar situations. There's stuff you want to do on the site, but it takes a long time. And you got to set aside the time to do that. Now, we'll have an idea for a page, and then on the same call, we will use Claude Code to build it and then launch it. Beautiful. Like if I go, for example, to our live site right now, we have, I think it's slash with slash Claude dash code, because obviously we're trying to help people use our product as well with Claude Code. This landing page here took maybe 2 hours from start to finish, design, development, and copywriting. It's on brand, it's beautiful. I mean, at least if you ask me. And that's really the benefit. We're able to move so much faster as a marketing team now than we ever have before. And so, with that being said, Kieran, any questions before I actually get into starting a project from scratch? I'll show you exactly how I do it. It's very simple, no secrets, nothing will be held. Any questions before I get to that?
Yeah, guys, sorry, I forgot to say, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and I will relay them to Julian as we go. And also, I'm just going to do a little poll now to see what everyone's experience with Claude Code is so we can get a kind of feel for the experience of people so far. Never used it is winning 50%. 30% have tried it a little bit, still going. Is I mean, I think the problem that you mentioned before with like how long it takes when you've got a really massive site, I think it's not a Webflow only problem. I reckon if you had a custom coded website that had been 8 years in the development and touched by a bunch of different developers, it would be an absolute nightmare. But the thing that AI does so well is it can read an entire code base in like 20 seconds and understand everything, and then it can refactor the whole thing. So even 8 years in, you is going to be able to understand the code base and tell you what needs fixing and just do things without breaking stuff. So I think that's like the really big difference. You don't need like diving into diving into a project in any no code tool for a human being or any code as well. I think is difficult if someone else did it because your brain doesn't work the same way as their brain did, and it's not going to be organized the way you want. So I think that's really what sets it apart, just that ability to read so quickly.
Yeah. It's the good thing is, like you said, if after a couple years you had a really difficult code base, the good news is that now Claude Code would be able to work on that code base. So the really cool thing here is this. It is insanely empowering because something about no code tools is you don't actually own your code. Like you are limited to the restrictions that they put on you. And if you want to do something for your product or your website and they don't make that possible, you're screwed. Like there's nothing that you can do. Whereas because all of the code that you have, everything that you create is completely yours with Claude Code. You will not run into a limitation. If you, I don't know if people here are building for themselves, for their clients, for companies, but whatever it is, if you start with a simple landing page, you can evolve that into a mobile app that's on the App Store if you want to, or not, keep it as a website, do what you want to do. But what I'm going to show you now is really just how I get started with rebuilding these. It's one thing to build a site from scratch, but when you already have all of this stuff set up and you want to bring something over that is pretty much the exact same so that you don't lose any traffic on Google or anything like that, there is a process that I followed on the Memberstack site, which I am going to show you here. So I will get right into it. First things first, I'm going to be doing this in actually my own tool, which is called Ship Studio. It's a free Mac app. Here's the thing. What I'm going to show you here, it's the exact same whether you're using this app or whether you are just popping open Claude Code in a terminal. But I see a lot of people here have said that they've never used Claude Code. The whole thing is this. Claude Code, and I'm actually trying to teach my father, who like works for a government insurance company and has literally zero technical background, how to use Claude Code. The tough part is this, getting started. Because you, as a non-technical person, have probably never opened a terminal on your computer. And when you do, it's a bit scary. And having to set stuff up and install dependencies, and you're like, I am not made for this. I'm not a developer. What am I doing right now? But once you get past that barrier, it becomes easy. At that point, you are developing with natural language. Anyways, this app right here, whether or not you choose to download it, is basically made to get past that stuff. It installs the dependencies for you, and it makes it so creating a new project is as simple as this. So I'm just going to go ahead and click new project. There are some different options here. If you don't know, Next.js is a very, very popular front-end framework. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick with that. I'm just going to call the site Kieran's site and create the project. Obviously, I think something has frozen right now with the screen share.
Oh no.
Beautiful. Don't worry. We'll be back up in just a second.
So
There
yeah,
we
while you're doing that, so a few of the questions. Okay, so Marin said, which skills knowledge were necessary to you to have you review your Claude Code output?
That is a good question. Here's the thing. You, as somebody who isn't a developer, doesn't know what's going on, it's going to say things that you're not going to have any idea what it means. And that's fine. Don't look at it saying some developer terms and go like, oh no, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to ruin it. However, I know people who you can set Claude Code on dangerously skip permissions mode, which basically means it's just going to run. It's not even going to ask you. It's going to do stuff. You can walk away, have a coffee, have a meal, do whatever you want to do. My recommendation is watch what's going on. Because, for example, we're about to rebuild a marketing site, and I know the fonts that are used. I know the colors that are used on that marketing site. And you are going to have situations where Claude is going to start trying to do something else. And so all you need to do is watch it. And if anything catches your eye that is strange, just let it know, hey, why are you doing that? And it might be right, but you just need that confirmation. So you're going to learn while you're doing this. All of these terms, for example, we'll get into this a bit later. You have terms when it comes to controlling the version of your site, the code. Like you have branches, pull requests, stuff like that. Terms that developers know, but if you're not a developer, it just sounds like a bunch of nonsense jargon. That's totally fine. The important thing is to not let that scare you because as you're doing it, the beautiful thing is, unlike any other time in history, you have a personal teacher right here in the form of Claude Code that you can say, dude, what's a branch? I have no idea what a branch is. You know, explain it to me in like, I don't know, Fortnite terms. Say whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It will explain it to you in the way that you want it to be explained. So we have our site open right here, and we have Claude Code, just a basic starter project. So what I'm going to do is grab something that we all have, and that is the URL for the site. And I'm going to paste this in. Obviously, I'm not just going to hit send. Something I want to do here is set expectations in the sense of if you are expecting to just write one prompt and get a perfect website out of it, you're not going to get that. And you should be happy about that because then, you know, why would you even have a job if AI was that good? What's going to happen instead is you're going to get something that is similar to what you want, and then you can refine, ask questions, tweak as you'll see. So what I'm going to do here, and this is, I would say, really the secret sauce in this method, is I'm not going to send this and say like, rebuild the site, make no mistakes, as everyone likes to joke about. I'm going to say, go through the site, document the site, make notes about how the site communicates, what it does, what the product is, the colors, everything, and save that in documents for yourself to reference as you're building it. That is going to set the stage for this entire project to go so much smoother. And along with that, if you are not a developer, mention that to Claude, because otherwise Claude is going to ask you things that you may not have the answer to. But if you say, hey, I'm not a developer, I don't know what a branch is, don't ask me any of that, it's going to understand that and it's going to work with you. So I'm going to type up my prompt. Kieran, I'll let you take it away while I'm typing the prompt because I cannot speak and type at the same time. Kudos to anyone else who
Yeah,
can do that.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah, so some of the questions I'm happy to jump in. So yeah, just as Julian was saying, like I had put off trying Claude Code for like a year. Everyone else was telling me about it, and I didn't want to do it. And then finally in December, I started using it, and I've used it every single day since. I've probably built 25 different projects since like the 3rd of December. That's how crazy it is. There was a guy I was speaking to on WhatsApp at the weekend, and he was like, he messaged me, he was like, man, I haven't tried Claude Code yet. And I was like, you got to try it. This morning I had a message from him saying, I'm on the $200 a month plan on Claude Code and I've got 5 agents building me stuff non-stop all night. I can't believe it. Like once you try it the first time, it just blows your mind the stuff it can do. And you don't need to understand everything that's coming out of it because you can just ask it to explain everything. So there's a file called claude.md, which is basically like your basic rules for Claude to run in that project, and you can tell it to update the file. You don't actually have to write the file. You can tell it what you want it to put in there. I always have in that file I tell it, I don't know code. I don't understand a lot of the terminology you use. So please explain everything to me using terms that I will understand. And so it does that every time it does something and it gives you the output. It explains it with analogies that I can understand. So that way I'm really learning the whole time, and I don't feel like overwhelmed by everything. And you don't have to understand everything because usually stuff it does just works. But I'm just sitting there bit by bit learning. And so after like 2 months of doing that, I feel just way more confident about everything that's going on. So it is a great way to learn all about software, even if you don't really want to build anything. It's just a great way to learn.
100%. I got my prompt up here, and here is one thing that I think you're going to see a lot of people telling you otherwise. Prompting doesn't matter. A lot of people, they'll see, for example, that Memberstack homepage that I did, and they'll say, what's the prompt? How'd you get that output? My prompting is extremely simple. It always has been. And when I talk to extremely talented developers who use these tools, which I want to quickly shout out for anyone who isn't super aware of the people that use Claude Code, everyone from like the content marketer on our team here at Memberstack who cannot code anything whatsoever to some of the greatest engineers in the world are using Claude Code. Everyone on our team uses Claude Code. You're using the same tools as them. And something that I notice all of the most efficient people with Claude Code don't do is focus super hard on their prompts. You need to communicate whatever it is that you want. And Claude Code is so good at turning that into a reality. And then you just need to be patient and iterate. So I will read what I wrote here, which is I sent the URL and I said, can you go through this entire site? It's currently a Webflow site, but I want to rebuild it. I don't just want you to start building. Instead, document everything, how it looks, pages, sections, everything. Make all of this documentation for yourself to use and update as you work. Once we have perfect documentation, we'll start with the rebuild. I'm not a developer, so please take agency and explain everything to me clearly. I want to feel in control. And then if you click Shift and Tab on your keyboard, you can see over here, accept edits, and then plan mode goes on. So if you are doing anything complicated that requires a lot of planning, this is basically just going to tell Claude Code, hey, take a step back and do some thinking about it. So what I'm having it do is think first, then make the documentation, and then after that, we're going to rebuild the site. So the thing about Claude Code and really any form of AI development is that you're going to send the prompt, and then you got to keep an eye on it. You got to watch it. But at the same time, there's a lot of waiting involved. So this right here is the time that I would do marketing for my product or just scroll on Twitter, depending on how I'm feeling at that moment in time. So we're going to have to let this sit. As you can see here, it is going to also in this tool, you can get notifications when it's done, because the worst thing is when you're building something with Claude Code and then you don't realize, but it's been waiting for you for 5 minutes. So what's happening here? You just saw a browser window pop open. I didn't do that. I'm going to move this out of the way. But this is using something called the Playwright MCP. And what that does is it essentially gives Claude Code the ability to go to your website, other websites, whatever it may be, look at it, take screenshots, and then understand those screenshots. So what it's actually doing right now in the background is looking at this site and just taking a bunch of screenshots so that it can understand how it looks, how it functions. It's going through the different pages right now. Pop this back. As you can see, it's gone to a completely different page, and it is just going to make a giant map of my site. So one recommendation that I have for anyone working with Claude Code is as soon as Claude Code starts struggling, you're probably doing something wrong. So let me give you an example. We have this app right here, the Ship Studio app, which is a local app. And like I said, I built it with Claude Code. So again, if I can build this with Claude Code, you can build a marketing site with Claude Code, believe me. But I started building it as a website where you can log in and, everything is right there for you. I very quickly started to run into a lot of different issues with permissions. It just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do in the way that I wanted it to do it. And so at that point, a lot of people will lose their confidence and say, okay, I can't do this. I must be bad at this. That's not true. Imagine Claude Code as the best developer on earth who also doesn't have the guts to tell you that your idea is stupid or your approach is stupid. So if it starts struggling, that's because it's listening to whatever you told it to do, and it's kind of like running uphill. So as soon as, let's say you're trying to have it do something and it's just running in circles, not working, not working, not working, the best thing you can do is stop, take a step back and say, okay, how should we rebuild this in a better way? So in the case of this app that you can see here, Claude ended up explaining to me that, hey, we're running into all of these issues because this is in a browser. What you need is something that lives on the user's computer so that it can work with Claude Code, so that it can work with the development environment. And once I decided to listen to Claude instead of trying to force Claude to do something that I thought was a good idea, it just went crazy. And I was able to build something with like 2 or 3 prompts, which was better than what I spent the previous week working on. So that is a huge tip that I have. As soon as Claude starts finding it difficult to do something, revisit the approach that you are taking. That being said, when it comes to marketing sites, you typically won't have that problem very much. A lot of people ask me when I was building the Memberstack site, what are the most difficult things that you had to overcome? Where did Claude struggle? It didn't at all. However, if you were expecting to get something perfect and polished right out of the box, you probably would have been disappointed. It actually did its documentation, and then I said, make me a homepage. I looked at it, the homepage sucked. I said, okay, make me another homepage. That one sucked too. I said, okay, make me another homepage. And on the third try, I was looking and I said, well, still kind of sucks, but this is in the right direction. And so from there, I follow a method that I invented, and I call it the what do you hate the most method. So you're looking at a big page that was generated by AI, and there's going to be something broken, like a layout, text overlapping with each other. That's the worst thing on the page. It's broken. So tell AI to fix it. It's going to fix it. And then after that, what do you hate the most now? Is there something else that's broken? Fix that. Once you fix everything that's broken, you're going to find something that just isn't good. Fix that, make it so you don't hate that the most anymore. Repeat, 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 repeat. And once you've been working on it for a couple hours, you're going to be looking, going, wow, how did I build this? This is too good. Those animations that I showed you on the Memberstack site are genuinely, I could build those in Webflow, but like that would have taken me probably longer to make the animations on the homepage in Webflow than it would have taken me to rebuild the entire website with Claude Code. So now it seems like it is making some pretty good progress on the documentation. This, again, has been the hack for me in telling Claude to update its own documentation. This way, it's working on it and it sees itself as, let's say, the project lead in comparison to waiting for you to say absolutely everything. So yeah, you got to wait a little while. As you can see, we're at 5 minutes here,
So we've had a
and
few questions about people asking like how would I link this up to like a CMS or like as a WordPress developer, like how exactly does it work? So I think it's worth clarifying that like this is way different from WordPress or any other kind of front end platform like that. The Claude Code is like basically doing the job of a developer or a team of developers if you hire them. So you can connect it up to any database or CMS you want to, any third party database that allows you to connect with code. You can just say to Claude, okay, I want to build, a massive website that connects up to my Notion as a CMS, or I want it to get all the posts from my WordPress. So for example, I had a blog that was all my posts were hosted on Notion. I got it to rebuild the entire blog. It scraped all of the posts from my Notion and then it just made them into little markdown files that are now hosted like on Vercel. So it's like no cost for hosting them. But equally, you can say, okay, I want to host them in another database. What should I choose? And so sometimes it'll recommend something like Superbase. So I've used Superbase for a lot of projects. It integrates really easily, and you can give it access to the Superbase MCP, which means it can create all of your database tables in them, set up all the types, do all the migrations. So you never have to log into Superbase apart from one time to get your like API keys. And then once it's done that, it's like has complete control over your front end and your back end and all the logic. And it's just so you're basically building your own complete CMS and site from scratch. You don't need to connect it to another one if you don't want to. Like it's crazy. And there was another time I was building like a video hosting website. And so I said to it, okay, what's the cheapest place to host videos? And it was like, well, Cloudflare Stream is really cheap. So we hooked that all up. And then I said to, and it was all working fine. And then I said, by the way, like I've got 24 hours of videos for my course. How much is it going to cost if people watch that? And it was like, oh, it's going to be quite expensive actually. And so it went off and researched and found a solution called bunny.net, which was 10 times cheaper. I'd never heard of that. I'd never used Cloudflare Stream either. And then it just ripped out Cloudflare, put in Bunny to host the videos. All the other stuff was done on Superbase. Like all this stuff I never thought I'd ever want to touch, but it could just switch between them so easily. And it just got it working within like 5 minutes. So if you build something and then suddenly you're like, I don't like using this database system, you can just tell it to change and it will be able to migrate everything for you. Like yeah, it's amazing.
oh yeah, I'm gonna jump back by the way to that CMS one because, like I said, I've been working with Webflow for a while. I've also worked with WordPress quite a bit and Squarespace, Wix, and CMSs are very important for us. We have content people on the team who, even though at this point, I mean, they really can just go ahead and open Claude Code and do what they want to do. We like having that super simple, like one click, fill out a form to create a new blog post type of flow. And there are a lot of options for your CMS, which I'll jump back to in a sec. It finished making its plan right over here. So it's explaining how the site is going to go. As you can see, I'm scrolling through it. And all I'm really doing now, usually if I wasn't on camera, I'd be going through it in a little bit more detail, but all you're really doing here is looking for something wrong. So for example, it said, oh, okay, we're going to use, these fonts, these colors. Look at those, make sure those are correct. If you go through and you don't see anything strange, you should be good to go. So here it explains, for example, key observations. The app is separate. We're only rebuilding the marketing site, not the tool itself. That's true. If you were trying to rebuild the tool itself in this, then you would look and you'd say, no, 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 I also want you to rebuild the tool. But in this case, that is correct. So saying there's something that's broken, cool, that's fine. We could fix that. Everything looks pretty good to me. And perhaps some of you were watching when I answered a question. It asked what it wants to do about the CMS. So I'm going to go ahead and click clear context and auto accept edits and let it do its thing. And then when it comes to the CMS, so on the Memberstack site, we were trying to figure out what a good CMS solution would be. Had a conversation with Claude, and Claude recommended something called Sanity. Sanity has been absolutely amazing, and I would highly recommend it, especially for more complicated sites. So there we go. See this, for example, npm install gray matter. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. If it's a concern to you and you're thinking that might be a problem, I don't know what it is, then you can click escape and then say, why are you doing this? What is this? But typically look at it. If it doesn't raise any red flags, you can click yes. Something that a lot of people talk about, I guess, who are more skeptical of vibe coding as a whole is, oh, well, what if Claude breaks something? Well, the beautiful thing is all of your code and everything that you do is pushed into GitHub. You have backups for every single thing that you do. So if you break something, you can restore that backup at any point in time. But back to the CMS thing, what I said to do here was just use markdown files for a CMS. Basically, there's a whole bunch of markdown files in the project. Just use that to manage it so we don't need to create a new static page every time. If you're building a more complicated site, like I said, Sanity is awesome, and I would totally recommend Sanity. You may not need a CMS at all. And for anyone who, let's say, uses WordPress, the beautiful thing about WordPress is that you can edit all of the code, meaning you can build a WordPress site with Claude Code perfectly fine. I actually would love to dive into that. I haven't yet. If anyone has or is thinking about it, I would highly recommend it. So if you're used to using WordPress, for example, you can continue using WordPress as your CMS. So we can see that this is moving, but yeah, Sanity is great. The issue, like I said, I have been using Webflow for quite a while. Webflow is closed off, and so I can't use Webflow as my CMS because they just don't allow it. But at the end of the day, I don't really think I need to. Sanity has been amazing for us. I think WordPress is also an awesome choice. But yeah, when it comes to the hosting as well, like you said, Kieran, everything you can just put it on Vercel and it's free, basically. We're not paying anything for Vercel hosting, and we have over 30,000 visitors a month. So yeah, it's good. We pay for the team and that's it. So you see this error here. And again, I think this is something that a lot of people get scared by when they see it. They're like, module not found, can't resolve, whatever that means. Don't worry. Here's the thing. It's still working, so I'm not gonna do anything here, but I can click this copy and then just paste it into Claude Code. And Claude Code will understand that this is a bug. It needs to fix the bug, and then it needs to move on. You don't need to know what's going on over there. At this point, I do know what's going on over there because I've been using Claude Code so much for so long. But at the start, something like that would just kind of scare me, and I'd be like, no, it's doing something wrong. But it is not. So it's starting to build out the page here, and I see it's making a couple design choices. Obviously, these things are more than likely going to be fixed by the time it's finished. I see it is using red instead of my usual green. It's using that down here. So all of this stuff you can tweak, you can refine, and along with that, you can pass more information into it. So I'm going to go on my other monitor right now and actually pop open my Webflow site.
A few
And what I'm
people are
going to do,
asking about Ship Studio. Like, is it publicly available? Should they
yep,
be using it?
I
Is it an IDE?
So, okay, where do I start with that? Publicly available? Yes. It is currently, you can go download it for free on Mac and you'll be good to go. Windows support for anyone here who has a Windows should be coming like literally later today. So if you have a Windows, then stick around. Like I said, it uses all of the same tools. My development workflow is I use Claude Code to write the code. All the code goes into GitHub, and then that gets served to the internet through Vercel. That is all Ship Studio does. The difference is that Ship Studio makes it a lot easier. And instead of having to juggle your GitHub window, your Vercel window, your preview window, your Claude Code terminal, and all this stuff, it just gives you everything in one place, along with some cool stuff that's going to make it easier. Again, like I said, there are notifications. There's something called skills. So this basically will allow you to give Claude Code a whole bunch of knowledge that it maybe otherwise wouldn't have. So let's say you're using Sanity, for example. I don't know if Sanity has a skill, but let's go ahead and type in Sanity. You can just search this. And as you can see here, Sanity best practices. So if I install this, Claude Code is immediately going to become way smarter at using Sanity. You can do the same. There are design skills. There are all sorts of different things, screenshots. So I would recommend it. When it comes to, is it an IDE? The thing is, when most people think IDE, they think of code editor. So they think of, VS Code, they think of Cursor, they think of stuff like that. IDE, and this is news to me, like I literally found this out a couple of weeks ago, just means integrated development environment. So it's an environment for you to develop in with everything you need integrated into it. So it is an IDE, but not in the classical sense. So this is basically something that we set up because, look, like I said, I've been using Claude Code for, you know, 8 months, I guess, at this point, like June, July last year. And I'd gotten used to the development environment, gotten used to the, GitHub dashboard, all of this stuff. But when I was going to bring other people in our team onto the project, they were like, whoa, dude, I'm used to Webflow. What is any of this stuff? Like, how do I push a change live? And I explain it to them, and they're like, but how do I make sure that it's not going to go live on the live site and it's just in staging? And that's where this tool came from. It is just a much more simple and intuitive way to do the exact same things you were otherwise going to be doing. And another thing I want to mention here is all of this code is yours. It doesn't live in Ship Studio. It's in your GitHub, just as if you popped open Claude Code and did it yourself. And the app is totally free. So I mean, not to self-promote here, but I really don't see any reason to not use this, except for maybe if you have Windows right now, which again, stay tuned. Everyone on our team uses this all the time now, not just because it's our tool. It's just so much smoother. Kieran, you still haven't got a chance to try it, have you?
No, not yet. But that's only because I'm specifically teaching Claude Code to some people next week, and I have to use Cursor because that's what they're used to. But yeah, I feel like this is the IDE of the future because yeah, no coders write code anymore. They get Claude to write it for them. So especially if you don't know how to code, being able to see all the individual files and read the code, I don't think is going to be a useful thing for us. It's way better to be focusing on the prompting and yeah, being able to like having everything in the same place is a great thing. And can we also just say that you built this with Claude Code and you showed it to the actual devs at, in your team and they were like, this code is good. Like that's
Yeah.
just crazy that you can build a native Mac app with Claude Code. You can also build native mobile apps. Literally a guy joined our community last week and he'd never used Claude Code before. And within 1 week, he had made a native mobile app using like Xcode, uh, just using Claude Code. It's like unbelievable the stuff you can do. I never thought I'd be able to build a native Mac app ever.
Same. And that's why I was so shocked. I built a mobile app, for example. Due to some confusing stuff. If anyone here decides to build a Mac app or a mobile app, mark my words, you are not going to have a fun time with the Apple developer experience. They make everything difficult. But anyways, besides the point, I built mobile apps and they're working and everything seems good and it's amazing. But those are all projects that I was working on. This project here, Ship Studio, the insane thing was, yeah, I built this. So I probably spent, 4, 5, 6 days working on it on my own. It was working, it was an MVP. And then I share it with the engineers who've been, writing code by hand for 10, 15, one of them even 20 years, which like I'm 24 years old. So that's, dude's been writing code for like as long as I've been alive. And I'm like, I vibe coded this whole thing. there's gotta be, they're gonna look at it and be like, okay, cool idea, Julian, but we need to rebuild this whole thing now. I had them do a full code review, and at the end, they're like, code's good. I don't know what to say. And now this is no longer 100% vibe coded in the sense that I built this to MVP stage, and now the engineers on our team are also working on it along with me. But guess what they're all using? Claude Code. So, but that's something where I've always thought like, I work with a lot of developers and I have imposter syndrome in the sense of I don't feel like I'm a good developer because, well, I can't really code on my own. That's kind of understandable, but it's really cool to see and to understand that this is no longer just something for non-technical people to build prototypes. This is what the developers use. This is what you can use to work on the exact same team as them. So let's see. It seems to have made a good bit of progress. We have some visual stuff. Sometimes, if that happens, all you need to do is click on restart server. Sometimes it's a bigger issue that Claude might need to fix. But in this case, we're going to see. Okay, so a lot of the visual things immediately have been fixed just by clicking restart. Taking a look over here, we can see this says not found. So I'm going to have to fix that. Income, expenses, what can it do? We have tabs right here. I think these look really good. I mean, hey, if we take a look at this, we got our cookie banner, got the product hunt banner down here, and then I go ahead and open the original site. It is, in my opinion, about 80% of the way there. And this has been accomplished with one prompt. So here's what I would do right now. I would go and find whatever, again, I hate the most. So in this case, it's the second I'm on the page, it says 404 not found. That's obviously an issue. So how do we fix that? I need to give it context. Context is king. Always remember that. So what I need to do is I need to help Claude understand how do we actually make this work. And the reason why it didn't figure it out is because this is like our project. It doesn't know how our project works. And so actually in Webflow, there's like an iframe. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that code right there. And then I'm going to say, this is how the iframe in the hero works. And I'm going to send it that. Sometimes it gets a bit tweaky. Don't worry about that. Running some commands. Again, if nothing raises a red flag to you, then you probably don't have anything to worry about. So now it is going to take a look at that, fix this, and then what I would do while I'm waiting for it is go through and find the thing that I hate the most next. And that, in this case, is probably the fact that there's no assets in here. So what I would say is we need to have assets in here, go on my live site, take the assets, and then use those assets in here. So I can go through that. Now, one thing I noticed is I typically would have it build out the homepage, work on the homepage, get it perfect, and then I'd move on to all the other pages. This actually created the whole site, like right off the bat, which is cool. But at the same time, now I'm going to have a lot more stuff to review and make sure it's working. So if I go over here to blog, these are the correct blog posts. What happens if I click one? This is indeed the blog post. It migrated all of the content over. If I go to templates over here, I wonder if it did that. This looks better. Let me show you, for example, the templates page on the live site. If you ask me, I mean, it's personal taste, right? But I actually prefer by a decent bit how this looks. What happens if I click on one? Little issue with the iframe, but I mean, it rebuilt almost the entire site with one prompt. And now we pay, $30 a month to Webflow for this site. I can now take this and actually make it like free for us to host. And so the next thing is this. Look, I can go ahead and open this in the browser. So I'm going to click, Google Chrome and take a look at that. It fixed the iframe thing, as we can see here. Look at that. It is now working perfectly, just like it works on the live site. And there's kind of a joke in the, let's say, vibe coding community. You can see up here, it says localhost 3000. Guys, for anyone who doesn't know, if you go to localhost 3000, you're not going to see this site. This is not publicly available on the internet. This lives on my computer and nobody else can touch it. So the next thing you need to do is, first of all, get your code on GitHub, which I want to mention again. I know I'm using Ship Studio here. All of this stuff, you want to get your code on GitHub, tell Claude. Claude can get your code on GitHub. It can do all of that for you. But in this case, Ship Studio makes it easier, humble brag. Click on create repo. There you go. Create repo. And then it is going to make that happen. It's going to set it up all in the background on your own account. Again, it's yours. You own it. We don't even have access to it. We are just the studio that you work in. So it's going to do this. And then you need somewhere to deploy your code. And as I mentioned, and as Kieran mentioned, Vercel is a really great option. It's super simple. I've used things in the past like Cloudflare, which are, they're powerful, they're good tools, don't get me wrong, but like if I open that Cloudflare dashboard, I feel like I'm in like, non-technical person purgatory. It's not fun. It's not fun. So Vercel is a lot more intuitive, I find. But again, the beautiful thing is when you're using Claude Code, especially if you're using Ship Studio, you don't really have to go in and experiment with it. You're just going to have to go ahead, create a Vercel account, create a GitHub account, connect it one time, and then you're not going to have to touch this stuff. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for this to create the GitHub repo, I haven't been looking at the chat. Are there any questions?
Adebayo said how many lines of code is Ship Studio, and I'm guessing you don't know that off the top of your head because you didn't write the code.
A lot,
Um,
man. I don't
yeah.
know. There's a good bit. Again, my understanding is that I just gave it to our engineers and they were like, yeah, this looks great. They've been shipping updates to it too. So yeah, it's it's pretty hefty. It's a big app, but it's pretty performant. It works pretty well. Claude Code eats a lot of RAM on your computer, unfortunately, but overall it's pretty good. So it seems sometimes it
So
gets
a good workflow I've been doing is like it has access to the Playwright MCP on all the projects. So that is what Julian used earlier that enables Claude Code to open up a browser and then look at the site. So when I get it to build something or build a new feature, before I even look at it myself, I say use Playwright, open up the app and test it out so that I don't have to. So it opens up the app, you can watch it in the browser, it will like make up a fake email address to log in, it will make up a password, it will log in, it will start clicking around all the different buttons and it always finds stuff that doesn't work and then it will just fix it by itself and you just sit there watching it. And then when it's done, you can go in and you know that the entire like user experience has been tested from end to end. And it's magical to watch it. And it, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you do always find little things that don't work here and there. But if you get it to do that, to say, test every button on the website, test every link, it will just do it. And you just sit and watch. I mean, I feel super lazy when I do that, but it is crazy. It's like magic.
Yeah. And another thing is test cases. So that is amazing for visual stuff. If you have anything like super cool going on in the background, it can set up these code files that are going to automatically test your app for you. By the way, obviously, when you're doing a live demo, you run into bugs that you've never seen before. So I ran into an issue. But once you create it, essentially what you are going to have is this view right here where it's going to show you your GitHub repo and it's going to show you your Vercel URL, which you can open at any point in time. I have definitely run into an issue here. And the beautiful thing is if you are using Ship Studio, you can let me know that something's broken and I will go in and make sure it's fixed very quickly, as seems to be the case right here. Not too sure what is happening. Let me give that one more go. Let's say with this project, for example, see if that works. If not, from there, that was the final click. You click on create repository, let it load for a bit, and then it gives you your link, which is live on the internet. You can share with people. And then all you need to do is go to your Vercel dashboard, connect your domain, and you are good to go. So I think that's it. Other than, again, the fact that this broke at the last second. But other than that,
Something has to go wrong or it wouldn't
it
be a
has
live
to.
demo. But yeah, yeah, it's just crazy that you could build that whole thing and it like migrated over the blog post. I don't even know if you asked it to migrate the blog post, it just did that. And we can do it all within like 40 minutes just sitting there watching it. And that's the thing about trying to teach Claude Code is you can't really teach it because it's really just you're just asking it to do stuff, and then when stuff doesn't work, you ask it what's gone wrong and to fix things. There's not anything to teach. It's more just how can we encourage people to give it a try and make it seem a bit less scary, a bit less daunting that first time you have to like copy and paste a command into your terminal just to install it. And then after that, you can use Ship Studio or you can use the Claude app on desktop, which is friendlier and has more friendly interface. So there's loads of ways to use it. But I think once you just give it like a small project or a build to do and just see what it comes out with, then there's no looking back. A few people were concerned about the cost of Claude Code. Have you tried out any of the cheaper alternatives? Because I know there's one called Kimi Code, which I think the model is like 10 times cheaper than Opus.
Honestly, my thoughts on that are this. There are a lot of really great options. I know some of the people who actually introduced me to Claude Code have been telling me lately that Codex is even better these days than Claude Code, and Codex is cheaper. I would recommend giving Codex a go as well. From my experience, Claude Code just does everything that I want it to do absolutely perfect. And the thing is, Claude Code is, look, it's $20 a month. That $20 a month plan is not going to get you very far. Let me tell you right now, it's good for experimenting, it's good for testing, but once you really start building things heavily with it, you are going to want to be on either the 100 or the $200 a month plan. That is expensive in the realm of subscriptions, but again, you are getting what I would say is the best code writer in the world. And if you are using, for example, if you're using the $100 a month plan, you can use Claude Code all day, every day, and you're probably never going to run into limits. The $200 a month plan, that's like you're some like crazy person with like 12 terminal windows open, all running at the same time, and then you're not going to run into limits. So it is expensive, but if you ask me, there is genuinely not a better investment that you could possibly make per month with $100 than Claude Code. But there are other options, and I'm interested to hear if people use them, the experiences that they have, because my explanation for Claude Code is that it just gets it. You want it to do something, you explain it, it does what you want it to do correctly without you having to bang your head a bunch in confusion. Whereas with any other tools that I've used, I have had mixed experiences. Claude Code is the only one that, from my experience, I can reliably get doing anything that I want it to do. And so I would highly recommend it, but I'm in the business of testing all these things out. So I really want to give everything a try. I'm open to giving everything a try, but if you're going to ask me, I've spent a whole lot of time on it, and Claude Code reigns supreme.
So James mentioned in the chat that Codex is has a new desktop app as well, and it's a bit cheaper. It starts from £20 a month. So Codex is like OpenAI's equivalent of Claude Code. So that's definitely worth trying. One thing I did was like if you think of all the websites you're currently paying for, the subscriptions for blogs and stuff like that. I just went through and one by one replaced them all, and I think I saved $60 or $70 a month just by replacing a few of my existing sites on Claude Code. So it made perfect sense once I'd done that. So if you set that as a personal project, like I don't want to pay for, WordPress or anything anymore, I'm gonna replace it and do that, then it feels like you're getting a good deal almost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, I have to pay for, well, me or the company has to pay for each and every site that we have running. We are spending just with Webflow alone, not even to mention all sorts of other subscriptions that are needed to run our sites, about $5,000 a year. Um, you can rebuild all of those things in Claude Code to the point where you no longer have to spend $5,000 a year. And at that point, the only thing that you really have to pay for is Claude Code. I just saw a question, by the way, you put them live on GitHub or Vercel. How much do these cost? GitHub is free. Um, There are some things, depending on what you're doing, that might cost you a little bit of money. For 99% of use cases, it's completely free. I think our company maybe pays 20 some dollars a month for GitHub. And Vercel, similar story. To get your site hosted on Vercel is free. Once you start, setting up teams and inviting a whole bunch of collaborators and stuff like that, you might need to pay. But for the vast majority, like you could have a free Vercel account with 75 projects all live on the web. I know that because I do, without paying Vercel a single dime. Really great pricing models, I think, from these companies. The only one that has a high cost barrier is Claude Code. But at the end of the day, think about it this way. You could pay a developer who's going to be super slow to get stuff for you, or you can pay Claude like $100 a month and get stuff instantly. By the way, super quickly to shout out, my bug stopped happening. And so I'm sending in the chat right now. You can access this site that we just built live on the internet, hosted through Vercel. It's truly that easy.
Awesome. Um, so thank you very much, Julian. That was really great, and I know the stress of doing a live demo, let alone a live build with AI, where one never knows quite what's going to happen. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out if you do want to dive into Claude Code, or if you are doing any other vibe coding with any other tools. Our friends Ash and Harold are actually running a challenge, the Vibe Code Olympics this month to match with the actual Olympics. So if you go to the vibecodinggames.com, you can sign up. They've got a load of free sessions on all different tools. I'm going to be doing a Claude Code one for them as well, actually. It might even be tomorrow. I'm not sure. So go to the Vibe Coding Games to sign up to that, and they've got like prizes and everything for the best apps that are vibe coded, but they're doing stuff all this month. And then the next thing is, if you want to hang out with a bunch of people who are just like me and Julian, just like figuring this stuff out as we go along, sharing tips, sharing knowledge. We have a bi-weekly office hours call where we all get together and just either complain about AI or say how magical it is. It depends. We share like really good tips and stuff. Then join the Create With community. We also do a lot of offline stuff as well. So we got a conference coming up in June in the UK if you can make it. I'm going to delete this part from the video when I upload it, and I will be uploading the recording. But for those of you who are watching live, if you use the code, you will get 50% off the cost of the annual membership. But I'm going to delete that so it's not on the recording. But otherwise, yeah, keep an eye on our YouTube channel because I will put this recording up there if you want to rewatch it again. And yeah, thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much, Julian, for sharing all your wisdom. And yeah, I hope we can do some more of these because it's a lot of fun, and it's great to get the questions from everyone. Because yeah, it really feels like people are engaging and enjoying this. So hopefully a few of you will try out Claude Code this month.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to come back at any point in time. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.